The Binding of Isaac is truly something special. What started out as an indie developer's personal pet project has grown and mutated into something so much more than we could have ever imagined. We're still seeing updates for this game even now. We've had updates as recently as 2018, for example, and we have another expansion planned for this year. Considering the origins, it's absolutely insane, and it's all thanks to this game's depth and complexity of its mechanics. I had no idea what to expect with The Binding of Isaac when I first downloaded it a couple of years ago. 700 hours later, I now consider myself something of an Isaac aficionado, which, if you told me beforehand that's the position I'd end up in, I would have never believed you. So, prior to the release of Repentance, the eternally delayed last update, the final swan song, the last hurrah, I'd like to take the opportunity to put all these characters in some sort of a logical tier list based on my own opinions and some sort of objective analysis about how they work within the confines of the game. We're going to be looking at each character one at a time in terms of their individual strengths and weaknesses. We're going to be looking at them from the perspective of a 100% save file, so Isaac will have the D6, Maggie will have her pill, etc, etc, etc. And generally we're going to be looking at how well they deal with the challenges that the game throws at them. So without any further ado, let's get on with this. I'm sure you can probably guess who number 14 is going to be, but here we are anyway.
Bad trip.
Coming in at last place we have the Keeper. Despite his good damage and some interesting synergies with his triple shot, the Keeper is utterly crippled by his bad stats, particularly his speed and his firing rate, the latter of which can never improve to a reasonable degree, and his health system. Every now and then, the health coins can be a bonus. You'll get a game break because you had, swallowed penny or the IV bag and an easy way to replenish your health. You'll be able to, buy out the shop. This doesn't happen very often. Most of the time it's just a flat-out inconvenience. It means he's so fragile in the early stages of the game, particularly considering, again, he's slow, he's not fast like the Lost, so you're much more likely to take those hits and suffer the consequences of lowering your health coins. I mean, the problems just mount up with this character. You can almost never take devil rooms, certain mini-bosses, certain regular bosses can be an absolute nightmare. God help you if you get the Matriarch. And yeah, the Keeper's just a chore to play. He can be quite fun in a challenging sort of way, but we're not rating characters based on how fun they are, we're rating them based on how good they are, and the Keeper really falls flat in that regard.
Health up.
Magdalene is honestly the most boring, uninteresting character in the entire game. However, just by virtue of having a slightly more normal playstyle compared to the Keeper, I have to put her at least one place higher. But I don't want to. She's not fun to play, none of her stats are even remotely worth talking about. She's just a 4-heart character who's slow and has to rely on a pill in order to increase her speed to an acceptable level. Like, even after using her pill, she's not fast. Let's get that misconception out of the way right now. And having the extra HP doesn't particularly help her much either. We all know that red heart builds aren't particularly strong in this game. Granted, there are a few places where it can be nice, especially if you get a healing item like, Charm of the Vampire, or she does quite well in Greed mode because it's easier to stockpile red heart containers in that mode compared to soul hearts. But overall, there's really nothing special about Magdalene at all. She's the most basic, boring character in the game, and as such, she loses out on the advantages that a lot of other characters have, so yeah. Do I have to keep talking about Magdalene? Hopefully not. Let's just end this one now.
Bad gas.
Lazarus is either the best bad character or the worst okay character, depending on who you ask, but in general I find his entire design principle to be very backwards. Turning into Lazarus Risen takes him from the absolute worst character in the game to an okay level. Like, Lazarus on his own is awful, he has nothing good about him at all, terrible stats all across the board. But having to revive early on puts you at the mercy of HP boosters. It means that you really, really need to get a soul heart on the first floor if you want to keep that devil room chance intact. And overall, having the extra life is just completely wasted when you're going to want to revive as soon as possible anyway, so yeah, sorry Lazarus.
48-hour energy.
This is a bit of a weird one, and I feel like a lot of people are going to disagree and say that Apollon deserves to be higher up on this list, but my problem with him comes down to lack of consistency with the Void. The Void on its own is a really powerful item if luck is on your side, if you're able to find like a library or something and absorb all the books, or even just having some useless stuff like, say, the Whiz to absorb early on and get those good stat boosts, but at the same time you may also end up getting nothing but boosts to your movement speed or boosts to your shot speed, stuff that really comes to diminishing returns quite quickly. And again, we come back to the same thing that I mentioned with the Keeper. The problem with Apollon is that any other character can do better with the Void, because without the Void, if you remove that from the equation, he's just a two-heart version of Isaac, so way too inconsistent for me to ever put him anywhere higher, which is a shame, but if luck is on your side, then he can be game-breaking, so keep that in mind.
Balls of steel.
The Lost is really hard to talk about, partly because of the stigma associated with being a one-shot and you're dead type of character, but honestly, he has a lot going for him. The main benefits are the fact that you start with flight, you start with increased speed, and you start with spectral tears. Realistically speaking, this means you can cheese out a lot of difficult rooms early on in a run until you're able to get those better items and power yourself up. The fact that he can take infinite devil deals with no drawback whatsoever is an incredible gimmick. It means that you can stockpile on powerful items without ever having to consider the consequences. All of that having been said, the downside to the Lost, as you know, is that 2 hits in any given room and you're dead. To be fair, starting with Holy Mantle means that that first hit never really matters, it never really inconveniences you, but it does also lock you out of a few items that activate when you take damage. You'll never get any benefit from the photographs, for example, and it means that sometimes you can just lose through no fault of your own. At the end of the day, this is a roguelike, and that means that, you know, random elements are always in play. Sometimes the Lost can just get fucked over through no fault of his own, which is a shame, because otherwise this character's very strong and super fun to play as. But, you know, sometimes those dice rolls just don't work in your favor, and that just sucks horribly.
Question marks?
Blue Baby's interesting to me because he starts out in quite a bad place compared to a lot of other characters, but by the end of the game he can become very strong. He has issues taking his first devil deal owing to his lack of red hearts, and the slightly higher than average stats don't really help to compensate for that in the long run. But late game, once you've got the ability to generate soul hearts or to keep your soul hearts topped up, once you're taking advantage of the Polaroid or the negative, more so the Polaroid, then Blue Baby can become really strong. Also, I mean, in a similar way to the Lost, the benefit to only ever having soul hearts mean that you'll never lose your devil room chance, so you'll always have at least a semi-acceptable chance of picking something up at the end of the floor, which is really helpful. Overall, not bad, not great, takes a bit of getting used to, but can be really strong once you get a good setup with him. Basically all there is to say.
Luck up.
Kain to me is really underrated in the community. You know, people like to talk about him as if he's Magdalene, as if he's this boring character who has nothing special about him, but his starting stats are actually really quite good. You know, he's fast, he's strong, yeah, he has poor range, but in this game, range isn't as important as people make it out to be. Most of the rooms you find yourself in are quite small and compact. Every now and then you get one of those horrible rooms that's, you know, it's 4 squares wide and full of flies or spiders, but most of the time it's not going to be an issue. The only thing that's a bit of a shame about Kain is that none of his starting items are particularly helpful. Having slightly higher than average luck doesn't really mean much in the long run, and every now and then his eye patch can interfere with gameplay too, usually not in a good way. But overall, Kain has the stats and the capabilities to improve throughout a run that you see in a better character. For me, Kain is a really nice middle ground on this tier list. Doesn't really do much wrong, does quite a few things right, but overshadowed by the characters above him. Still, significantly better than the characters below him in my eyes, which is why he deserves to move up into his own tier.
I can see forever.
Lilith is the most Marmite character in the game. You either love her or you hate her. For me personally, the whole blindfolding gimmick doesn't really impact her most of the time. It does mean she has a few dead drops, but they're usually not items that are that worth picking up anyway. The only thing that she really misses out on is like Maw of the Void, which is one of my favourite items in the game, admittedly. But having Cambion Conception from the start is so abusable in the right circumstances, or not even in the right circumstances, even in the wrong circumstances. You can still manipulate your health quite easily in order to get those high-powered minions early on. And even just with her starting set, you know, all it takes is Lil Brimstone, or even something a bit weaker like Mongo Baby, Rotten Baby, and she can really steamroll a lot of sections of this game. The box recharges just quickly enough for it to be abusable, and she can double her money through things like the Habit, you know, allowing her safe to take hits to get those extra charges. There's so many good battery items in the game that really benefit her. So get yourself Car Battery, get yourself anything that stores a charge, and Lilith can steamroll very, very quickly. She does take some getting used to, and some rooms are really aggravating, particularly anything early on with Stonies. She has a really hard time navigating those, but she can be really good if you know how to play her well, so one of the more interesting characters in the game in my opinion. Lilith can do some work.
Perks.
This is another controversial one, I think, but in general I find Sampson to be a very consistent character, just owing to how powerful his starting item is. Bloody Lust is very easily abusable. You know, all you need to do is just stack up a few hits in a room that you don't particularly care about, and his damage output will skyrocket for the remainder of the floor. He's one of the only characters that can make good use of red hearts, just because it's easier to heal them compared to soul hearts, but even so, if you have, you know, Dark Bum or Maw of the Void, or even Serpent's Kiss, it can be quite easy to stockpile those extra hearts, which you can then burn on improving your damage. Yes, realistically speaking, other characters can do that too if they find Bloody Lust. It's not a terribly uncommon item, but Sampson on his own merits, just based on his starting kit, is very, very consistent. The only downside to him is a slightly lower than average firing rate when you first begin a run, but that can be easily remedied, and unlike the Keeper, he's not locked into his lower firing rate at all times, so you can still get yourself down to 5 and just take advantage of that high power. So, especially in the other modes as well, where, you know, health management is a little bit more important, Sampson can really, really do some work. Eve is a character who is both blessed and cursed at the beginning of a run. She has much lower stats compared to the rest of the cast. However, Whore of Babylon is such a powerful transformation and so easily obtainable once you have the Razor Blade and you're able to shed those red heart containers. Much like Sampson, because you can choose when you take damage, the entire process of getting yourself down low on health becomes quite moot. Just, you know, burn those devil deals, get to a soul heart build, and then she can honestly tear through the remainder of the game. All it takes is, you know, a willing use of the Razor Blade, put yourself into the Polaroid Shield, and then she can shred through an entire boss at the cost of 1 heart. It's so worth it to keep this transformation going, and her combination of items just puts her in such a beneficial position from the start. Eve is really good in my opinion.
Friends till the end.
The Forgotten might be the only gimmick character in the game whose gimmick actually benefits him. Having the split between replenishable red hearts, well, bone hearts technically, and the soul heart nature of the soul is a really powerful combination, but the best thing about him is being able to hide behind the Forgotten shell and block projectiles with it. This completely nullifies a lot of bosses in the game. You can shit on Isaac, you can shit on the Hush, just by virtue of hiding behind your shell, and you know, even if you don't have the stats for it, just getting in a few weak hits here and there, you're almost invincible if you set this up correctly. A lot of his synergies are so powerful. You can get such strong synergies with the Knife, with Brimstone. These are items that you'd want anyway, and they're even better on the Forgotten just by virtue of his gimmick, by virtue of how he operates with these items uniquely compared to the rest of the cast. I honestly think the Forgotten could be a contender for the best character in the game. However, the characters I've put above him are just more consistent. It all comes down to consistency in this game, because so much of this game is up to luck that your character really needs to be able to carry through those bad runs. To me, the Forgotten is the best gimmick character in the game, but sometimes, you know, every now and then you just won't get the items that you're looking for. Still, even then, I don't think you can call him a bad character, or even an okay character. The Forgotten is really, really good.
Power Pill!
My personal favourite character in the game, Judas, starts out in such a beneficial position compared to most of the other characters. The Book of Belial, oh my god, this item is so good. The 3-room recharge means that you can use this more or less whenever you want to. All it takes is one larger room and it's basically recharged anyway. And he is the best boss killing character in the game. You can use this thing to clear challenge rooms without really too much effort. The only downside to Judas is that every now and then when you're playing on hard mode, you might get clipped by a champion on the first floor and die for no reason. Aside from that, having one heart container at the start of the game really doesn't impact him in any way at all, since it's so easy to gain HP in this game. And Judas's advantages, like his high damage, just really outweigh any negatives you can possibly bring up. You could even argue the fact that because he starts with the book, you're already 1/3 of the way to Bookworm transformation, and therefore he has a much easier time attaining that than anyone else. Judas is just an absolute powerhouse. To me, the most fun character in the game. I love using him on casual runs, or even when I'm streaking. To me, I have a lot of faith in Judas whenever he comes up on the random wheel. And yeah, he's just a really strong character. A lot of his synergies are pretty normal, pretty easy to understand. Very much a no-frills, easy to grasp powerhouse.
I'm excited.
The moment that Isaac unlocks the D6, his tier placement effectively skyrockets by virtue of being able to break one of the core fundamentals of the game. Rebirth, Afterbirth, whichever version of the game you're playing, they're all balanced around one thing, and that's the fact that item drops are never consistent, so you're forced to either adapt to what you find, or don't take it and go vanilla, essentially. Isaac doesn't have to deal with that. If you walk into a room and you find Bob's brain, you don't need to take it, you can re-roll this. And given how powerful battery items are in this game, you can potentially re-roll it multiple times. So even if there's only one pedestal item in the entire floor, if it's just the treasure room, for example, or just something in the shop, it's really not that hard to get at least 2 or 3 re-rolls on it on any given floor. You can re-roll devil rooms, you can re-roll angel rooms. Isaac just has such an easy time getting what he wants that it's almost unfair. There's nothing wrong with him. There's effectively nothing wrong with him. He doesn't have any downside. The D6 is only ever a benefit. If you get a bad reroll, then that's on you because you chose to do it anyway, and Isaac can just completely dominate most of this game. So who's better? Well, I mean, come on, we all know.
Feels like I'm walking on sunshine.
When you look at Azazel objectively, you have to recognize that he is essentially easy mode for the game. Just his starting loadout alone is so favorable to him. He has all the benefits of the Lost with none of the drawbacks. So you have the speed, you have the flight, you have higher than normal damage, and you have Brimstone. Even the short-ranged version that Azazel is permanently stuck with unless he finds it in the Devil Room is so powerful. It can shred through basically anything apart from late-game enemies with relative ease. He has such a low learning factor compared to other characters too. You don't really need to think when you play Azazel. You fly around and you shoot stuff with Brimstone. His only downside is the fact that because he's so short-ranged, some bosses can occasionally give him some difficulty, but even then you'll probably kill them before they do any meaningful damage to you, and Azazel, man, I don't know how you even balance this character. Apparently he's getting nerfed in Repentance. Time will tell, we see if that's enough to take him out of top tier, but for now he is easily 100% the best character in the game. And there we have it. That's my ranking for Binding of Isaac, Afterbirth Plus. What's going to happen in Repentance? Time will tell, we can't say at the moment. So, until then, thank you for watching. Have yourselves a great night, and take care.